Hi. Well, welcome to the conversation. My name's Roanna. I'm part of the team here at LCSD, and we wanted to have a chance just to talk about retreat. We started the series last week, or last month, sorry, with Grace Owen and her kind of call to retreat. And it's a conversation we're going to be having throughout the summer, both as people who are spiritual directors or accompaniers. What might retreat be like for you? What is your invitation? But also where might there be an invitation to maybe be curious about kind of spiritual direction sideways, as we sometimes say here at LCSD, and maybe offering kind of group work or retreats or being a guide in other ways. And I'm really excited to be talking with Mary Monfries and Chris Blakeley today about that and hearing their wisdom. We had a little chat this week and it was just such a beautiful moment. And I'm excited to see what comes out of that conversation. And I think we talked about hoping people have some ooh moments, that they might feel like, oh, maybe there's something in this for me. So hopefully you enjoy this conversation and there's some wisdom and invitation in it for you. I'm going to do this like awkward thing. I imagine for Mary and Kristen, just introduce them so you know who they are. It's always like awkward if someone talks about you. But introductions are so Mary was an Mary was a tutor on Encounter, and that's how we met here at our course on LCSD and training spiritual directors. But she is a lover of music. She used to work at PwC and as a spiritual director, but now offers kind of coaching, group work, and guidance and retreats, and facilitates that for people of faith in all backgrounds. And she leads these retreats with Chris. Is that fair to say, Chris? That Chris is a Benedictine oblate, and is that right? Is that oblate?
Oblate.
I'll say that again. Such an awkward bit of the conversation. Um, so Chris is a Benedictine oblate, and his own practice is rooted within the contemplative and Ignatian spirituality, and he works across all faith traditions. He is a coach, a spiritual director, and teaches formation at Waverley Abbey. He's also the founder of Crossroads Retreats, which is a charity designed specifically to support people who are in transition and change in life and are looking for a path forward. So thank you so both for having this conversation with me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess it'd be lovely just to hear kind of how you started kind of being interested in retreats, or what is the beginning kind of nub of this journey for you?
Suppose that's me, isn't it? Yeah. Gosh, 30 or so years ago, walking into a Benedictine Abbey, Alton Abbey in Hampshire for the first time, and realizing the special space that the monasteries offer. So it begins there, actually, and just the power of silence and stillness to transform things in a place that's held in prayer. I remember actually when I walked into this abbey, it's a tiny little flint abbey, and the image I got as I walked through the gates was of a giant cathedral. It's like sort of Winchester Cathedral. It's got this very clear picture, built out of invisible blocks of stone. And then I realized, oh, okay, these are blocks of prayer. And I think that attuned me actually from day one to the power of prayed in spaces, these thin spaces that we'll talk more about. And so, because I was working leadership development at the time, I thought, well, why don't I apply this in my vocation? So I started running retreats for people, just taking people away into more spacious spaces. And fairly quickly, lots of people started coming who just wanted space for their own lives and all walks of life. And so we realized we need to set up a charity. And so that's how Crossroads Retreats was founded, just to provide people literally with 2 days of space to stand at the crossroads and ponder. The idea was pondering what we call threshold questions. So the questions life's posing to you. That was sort of from day one, really, and a very, very simple process that just bore such beautiful fruit for people, all the time held in places of prayer. And then gradually the journey sort of continued there. Funnily enough, for me, it was actually doing the retreat work that took me into spiritual direction. Obviously, I went to St. Beno's, as you say, and spent 4 weeks doing the exercises there. realized the power of this kind of gentle, God-centered accompaniment. And then we just expanded it to running the pilgrimages. And well, Mary joined me through the Crossroads works and has been with me on the journey since. Over to you, I think.
Well, yes, similarly to Chris, I came to spiritual direction and training at LCSD through retreats first. So I was very, very privileged, really, in my career at PwC. I was a fully client-facing advisor all my career. But latterly in my career, probably the last 5 to 7 years, they also trained me as a coach, more formally as a coach as part of my work. And about similar sort of time, I actually came across Chris because his leadership development business was leading the development training at the firm, and came across Chris and got to know about the charity, and was really fascinated, really said to Chris, how do people access the kind of skills and deep coaching I've experienced if they don't work for a big firm that can pay for that for them? And that's when he told me about Crossroads retreats and said, look, come along, come to a Crossroads retreat, see how you go. And I remember walking into Ascot Priory, as it then was, where I went on the first retreat I went on, the Crossroads retreat, and just feeling like I was coming home. And so it became really clear to me that that was a path I was being drawn towards. Chris was generous in saying, do I want to train to be a guide? I gave up 10% of my time for the firm and volunteered that with the retreats charity. And it was through that really that I was drawn into, I suppose maybe I've done your spiritual direction sideways and then thought, oh, let's train for the one-to-one work. So that was my journey.
Yeah, it's interesting you both came into direction through retreats. That's your way. But you mentioned coming home and this idea of as you entered into the space, the stones of prayer and just kind of thin spaces. And you've talked about that kind of place being really important for retreats. Can you say a little how do you know a place is a thin place?
Should we start first with this one? Well, if I speak personally, it's a beautiful question you ask, and might be one that we would ask on retreat as well. So just something about when I'm somewhere, somehow there is less resistance to the divine indwelling. There's a sense of the divine in whatever is surrounding me. That might be a building with prior history. It might be out here on the Llyn Peninsula, right in the middle of nature. And it's just, James Finley talks about those moments of, presence. And then the question becomes, what's going on here? What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that's allowing me to feel this more clearly? So that for me is how I would describe a thin space, the thinness of the veil between our natural human way of being and our consciousness of the divine indwelling. And it is an important place. It can be so helpful to us. And of course, that divine indwelling is there with us everywhere. And the practice becomes, how do I remember it wherever I am?
Yes, as I say, we're probably voracious retreat consumers as well as providers. So that whole thing about being in our own practice, and it becomes a constant inquiry, around ultimately sort of expanding that sense of presence. So whenever we've gone anywhere and felt this is an amazing space, quite often we'll just then offer some kind of retreat there. So a CC would be the classic, going to a CC, which again has such a powerful presence. Bardsey Island, where we live, or the pilgrimages that we run in Whitchurch, Canonicorum in Dorset, again with the church there clearly has a healing charism. So there's a discerning, there's a sensing in, and of course the place is steeped in history, so it's well known. And it's just pure judgment, really, that you immediately get a sense that a group coming together, and the community aspect is so important in these places. Something amazing will be available in that group setting.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about people who may not have gone on retreat, and you're saying, we're naming the kind of the closeness of the divine and the community aspect. What is it that you think retreat offers, kind of both kind of individually and kind of collectively to people who maybe people haven't gone on a retreat before and experienced that? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to the previous question, at the end of the day, it is all about prayer.
Mm.
It's a place where, for whatever reason, people have been in that open, I'd say the simplest definition of prayer possible, which is that just that open channel of connection to, I'll use the word divine, to this amazing mystery that unfolds and guides and leads us to and then that seems to create these sorts of spaces. So in the simplest early stages of our work, it would be just go to a monastery, settle into the rhythm of a monastery. So you're going into a place where people are living in a rhythm of life that's held, you're looked after. So you don't have to be, it's just that the retreat space is a chance to get away from all the distractions and simply be you, just as you are. So the welcome, the monastic tradition of unconditional welcome, come just as you are. There is absolutely no judgment in the arriving, both into the space that is always a welcoming space, and then the way we invite and get groups to sort of settle. And we find consistently people settle very quickly into a group holding. And there's something about being a community. So, the traditional image of a monastery is a place of prayer and a place of community. And on a retreat, we become the community, the 12 or 20, however many who gather. And that creates its own life, which is absolutely central. And it means everybody, you can arrive and everybody arrives obviously with all sorts of questions and feeling self-conscious. But I think fairly quickly we realize that we're in this together, we're building this together, and there's just a special quality of connection that arises very, very, very quickly. I always say to people, just simply getting through the door is success, really. It's all upside from the moment you've honoured yourself enough and valued yourself enough to treat yourself to 2 days doing absolutely nothing in a safe space with a bunch of people, and it's all upside from there. And of course, then every group just has its own unique mystery and mix in terms of the atmosphere and the holding that's created.
Yeah, I would agree. For me, it is that lovely quote from Matthew, "Come away for a while." Come away with me for a while. So for people with a faith, come away with me, Christ. For those who wouldn't recognize themselves being a particular religion, come away to be with who you truly are, without all the distractions and the associations. And as Chris says, the community, so everyone feeds back to us just how important the community sense is, and perhaps some surprise at how quickly they feel trust. So that's important if you're leading a retreat. Just how do you create the space where there can be trust to be vulnerable? And we keep using this word space. I think the importance of, you're on a journey together when you're in community, you're touching back in and sharing and encouraging people that what they speak is probably going to bless each other, as well as helping things become clearer in themselves. But there's also space for solitude, space to be, and for that to kind of freely flow within enough of a structure for people to feel held.
Yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about the individual and collective work that happens when you are open in that sense of truest self that is allowed to be present, and how it feels to be met, in that vulnerable state by others, and also by the sense of mystery or God, and how healing that can be in what happens between you and the way you're met in community also. There's something quite beautiful there.
Beautifully summarized, thank you.
Thanks. Chris, you mentioned that thing of like the mirror that happens, and kind of, that as people, you've mentioned like, as people were sharing, how much it kind of inspires and reflects off other people. Could you say a bit more about that and what happens there?
Yeah, so I pinched that from Richard Rohr. He wrote one of his daily meditations on his phrase like true religion is just holding up the mirror, so to the divine image, that's in all of us, which I found a lovely description of what happens in the retreat, because quite frankly, it's impossible, and rightly so, for us to see the image of the divine in ourselves, where it's often, but of course others can see it and just gently, and in a group, there's an objectivity in a group. As people just gently kind of reflect back what's flowing through each of us, then it's incontrovertible, really. Then we begin to see ourselves, or to learn to see ourselves through others' eyes, the way the divine sees us, views us, the divine that has spoken us into being and speaks us into being in every moment. So there's a gentle elegance to the work of being wholly in your own journey and wholly in your own questions, which is where we start. Just come as you are with your own questions and share. But as people speak their own stories, there's all sorts of connections get made. Somebody says something that is, central to somebody else. And as people respond quite naturally, in their own way, this sort of true community emerges. I think Henry Newen talks about, true community only comes from true solitude. This true solitude meeting true solitude leads to true community. And I think that, we stumbled our way into this really from the very earliest Crossroads retreats, which are just very simply people at a crossroads, so sharing a similar stage in life, coming together and sharing from that. And we discovered fairly quickly that it wasn't just a vocational thing, that actually the divine became very present as people shared. So that's just something we've held and honoured in pretty much everything we do. And as Mary said, the lovely thing is you come, because obviously if someone's thinking of coming to retreat, it can be a bit sort of scary to think, not only I'm going away, I'm going to be there with a bunch of other people and all the kind of performativity and stuff. But it's so lovely once people settle and the holding's created, to be able to help each other. It's so simple, really. And that's how and that's the essence of the work. And we find as guides, we hold the shape, but we're wholly in it too. And where appropriate, if something's real for us, we'll speak that into the mix. We're not really set apart as guides, even though we are. It is like spiritual direction, really, or more like spiritual friendship, really. Actually, that would be something maybe to explore later. But we're in it as well as holding it.
Yeah, I wonder, Mary, if you could speak to that in terms. You mentioned how do you build trust, and what do you see your roles as guides, and does that feel different from direction? Does that feel similar to how you do offer one-to-one work?
Well, let me start in the centre of that. So to use the language on the encounter course, that loving gaze that we learn right from year one, that stuff. Oh, what is it to be in the loving gaze and to be looking at another in that same loving gaze? That, for me, at its essence, is absolutely what Chris is talking about. We gather together. We're gathering, and somehow through being able to drop through all the layers of our arriving and our and the performativity and where do you come from? Well, what was your journey like? And there comes a point when everyone's settled, and then the whole essence of this, maybe, I think, is we're in the way of interacting with one another, which is looking from that place of knowing we are utterly loved and the other is utterly loved. And maybe that sounds a bit prosaic, maybe it sounds a bit idealistic, but I just can tell you it happens. And it's not really because of what Chris and I are doing. It's just, well, I'm going to use James Finley words again because I love them. What is a way of creating a space in which there can be least resistance to what the divine's wanting to do in that group with each person and collectively? So if I become a bit more practical for those who are thinking, oh, Mary, for goodness sake, just speak in English. What do we do? There are some really obvious things at the beginning, like, setting some ground rules. We draw a house with a roof and we set some ground rules about confidentiality and all the things you'd expect. And actually, Chris talked about helping each other. There's a sort of, it's almost like we're encouraging people to reflect back to one another. But I know I find myself saying at the beginning of every retreat, you might find yourself trying to advise someone or help someone. We're not here to fix each other. And I always tend to say, you know, if you find yourself doing that, you might find Chris or I stopping you. Please don't take that as a slap on the wrist, because it's come from a place of love where you want to help that person to share of your own experience. But actually, this space is about something different. It's something beneath advice and help. It's a different layer of help that doesn't really come from us.
Yeah, I could so feel the impulse that would be, it's in all of us, isn't it, to want to fix or to reach out, or, I mean, it's like even in our accompaniment, to just how do you let people be where they are, just as they are. I imagine it's incredibly freeing to say that it's not yours to fix to people.
Yeah, I mean that was in the basic training when we started expanding Crossroads and training guys just to hold the rhythm of it. It was all about that. Stop trying, get out, and because we all want to do it. And I was going to pick Mary up a little bit. She spoke a minute about, you know, creating a space where there's least resistance to what the divine is doing. And it had me realize, actually, you know, just to add the other word into that, which is to how the divine wants to be with us and for us to be, because it's the whole thing about this is being with the flow of love, of the divine. And so the whole logic is there's nothing we can do. It's, you know, the will of God is happening. There's this huge tide running through everything. Our only job is to arrive, to become present. So it always begins, all the training and preparation is around be present, be here ourselves. And then that lovely Benedictine instruction, the first line of the rule, listen and incline the ear of the heart to what's going on. And you know, if we can, you know, just get those two happening, everything flows from that. We sometimes, arrive with it. You know, I've sat on Crossroads. I had people, one guy's a medical director of a huge national trust, another guy who's coming through the end of a burnt out, ruined life in recovery, just coming through recovery. Different, you know, as one of these retreats, I looked at there's 12 people in the room. I thought, how are we going to cope with this? A typical human question, you know. And within you know the first 45 minutes of sharing, everybody's leveled, and suddenly it's okay. There's a bigger reason why these people are here. There's a bigger process at work, and so just trusting all the time, trusting that. I think it's for anyone who's thinking of doing retreats or coming on retreats, is you're held. You know, you're held, and that makes all the difference. Sorry, mate.
You know, and of course we we work with the resistance as it comes up. You know, so as it flows and releases, you know, there is stuff where people might be, oh, let's just be with that. The same as we are in spiritual direction.
We've mentioned kind of, I guess, retreat and place and thin spaces and community. I guess I was thinking about that kind of resistance or being together, and just what role being present and kind of embodied in what that kind of experience feels like together. What does that bring to a space to kind of be physically somewhere or physically with people? Do you think that makes a difference on a retreat?
Yes, I do. Undoubtedly, I do. That physical presence. And the gathering together and the communal intention, it all makes a difference, and the choice of space. As I'm speaking this, you can probably almost hear a reservation to that. And it's because I have experienced, and I do experience even this morning, you know, online, on Zoom, it's amazing the depth that can come to, you know, we may be working with somebody who can't travel for whatever reason. So there's something about creating a space within where you are, and the same intentionality of being on retreat, even if you were on your same home, that is also possible. So I don't in any way want to pretend that it isn't really significant when you're physically together in a different place. It is. but I wouldn't want anyone for whom that isn't possible for any reason to feel, well, that's not for me then. So I've just experienced that this morning. Somebody wanting to be on retreat, wanting a session before retreat and a session within retreat. She'll be in the same place.
Yeah, I'll just sort of second that, really. That work of presencing and becoming embodied, the first commandment, heart, soul, body, mind. So all our work is around that. That's the most important thing, really, because the connectivity is spiritual connectivity, which is outside of space and time. So probably actually one of the most powerful retreats I ever got involved with was a simple retreat I ran with my colleague Karen, called Entering Stillness. And we just met once a month on a Monday morning for about 6 months, 8 of us in total. And that group still, and that was way back in lockdown, they still check in and meet, stay in the connection that just arises when we simply, it's Christ's lovely promise, isn't it, that when we gather, wholly gather, he's there, so that does cross all bounds. It's sort of easier when we are in the shared space and in thin spaces, which open this up and make it easier for us, really, all to settle, to gather, to come out from our distractions. And then the only what really is interesting about your resistance, I think, getting on retreat is the minor miracle. That's even as we're talking this, it makes me realize actually how much prayer is probably needed to anyone who just expresses an interest or shares a word. Once we're there, resistance is much more subtle. It's often more. Quite often we find ourselves, someone just something amazing happens and they move on, and we say, well, hang on a minute, what's that you're feeling? Oh, it's just peace. Just peace? Can we stay with that peace? Oh, what happens when we actually allow the peace to flow? And oh, wow. And of course it flows through and out into the group. So little things like that. Or the classic switch, the morning of the last day on a retreat. It's a bit like I almost see it like the morning of the third day, the resurrection morning. There's an incredible presence that builds, and then we're leaving, and then people switch, and that whole thing about switching it off and switching into a different layer of our personality. That really is the essence of this. The retreat space reminds us who we really are. And so again, getting people into the awareness of switching between our levels of being is part of the subtle work of retreat. And resistance often is that it's just moving on too quickly, as opposed to really staying with the one who just wants to be with you, just to stay with you and walk with you. That's the way it works.
And my turn to pick up. And these things are all about language, aren't they? And how we hear words. But the switch on and switch off doesn't do it for me. For me, it's some of the practice of having remembered who we are. How can we come into a layer of being which allows us to be, I'm going to use the word safe, as protected as we need to be, as defended as we need to be in whatever role we're in, without forgetting our connection to what we found on retreat?
Thank you.
What we actually do in life is switch it on and off, or we think we do. But I think we all know we can't switch it off, even if we wanted to. But we forget. And it's just reconnecting in.
With no judgment. We love our unremembered bits as much as our remembered bits, because they the spice of life, I think. So, yeah.
I think, we spoke about, I've just come back from Camino, and just that feeling of true self on the Camino and rawest self and remembered self was so potent. And then you come back and you go, oh, I don't know if that true self can be on the streets of London with the same, greeting every person bon Camino. It probably isn't going to fly in Vauxhall. And, but wanting to stay remembered and wanting to stay kind of attached to that. But I think there can be this expectation, or kind of almost like a shame, if we don't stay in that kind of remembered state after retreat, that's where we should be all the time, that kind of high moment. I guess, what would you say to people as they were kind of coming off of retreat?
Well, I'll say it to you. I think we did the other day. It's just, as you speak of your time on Camino, it's here again. I can see it in you. It's very, very beautiful. And you speak so beautifully of all shame or regret or whatever it might be, that, oh, I can't stay there all the... Actually, I can remember myself just walking up a busy escalator in London. All it takes is, hello. Almost like Christ is saying, hey, you remembered I'm here. I'm not sure he wants us to be walking out completely raw and undefended into whatever situation we might be in, Vauxhall. You know, he's putting some trust in us too, that we'll keep ourselves safe. And yet, just all he needs is that, oh, and perhaps even the regret, I've not remembered myself, is the first divine pull back to say, hey, remember here, right within you.
Yeah, I mean, that's in many ways, if there is a work in this, if there's a learning, it is just the different strategies we find to return. It's the logic of the prodigal. You return, you come back. And then, there's a whole range then of practices we encourage, from breath work to sensitivity to looking with different eyes. And anything you touch on that brings you back. And the retreat is then just a sort of a top up, really. It's like topping up the well. Well, that's the wrong phrase. It's a little bit of a clean out, isn't it? That allows the wellspring to flow more freely. And yeah, I think there's something about the remembering. I mean, the way you talk about your Camino, you come away to Bardsey, or we go on retreat to Assisi. There's something about the remembering as well that has a different life to it. So again, anything that helps you not cling back after the experience, but just remember who you were in those times, and obviously staying in some kind of connection. What has fairly naturally happened amongst the people who've come on our retreats is people come back for different things. We create little vehicles where people can kind of connect in and touch in with each other. And it's just gently keeping that process of remembering going, without any onus, but it's just almost it's a yearning, isn't it, to keep coming back. Yeah. But when we forget, we forget. Yeah. So it can be completely gone, and then suddenly wake up and say, "Oh, how did I end up so far away?" And that's the prodigal story gets it so beautifully. That's the story of our walk with Christ.
Like the idea of, I think my experience, I've led a few kind of silent retreats when I was pastoring, and people always come, I think, to retreats with big questions and like, this is my last ditched attempt. I've got to go for a silent retreat for 48 hours. If I do it really intensely, I'll get the answers. And so often the answers become not as important. And it is a remembering of who they are, or true sense of being loved or created or peace or just held. And I think that's something very powerful about, as you say, kind of the removal of those skins, that people kind of shared expectations of themselves or the shoulds, and they kind of reconnect with that, oh, this is the true me. And then from that space, I can discern and make decisions from that, more vulnerable posture.
Again, beautifully summarised, Roanna. You have the capacity to do this with less words than us, which is...
No. I'm like, oh yeah, that is what happens. And it just, I think when we're speaking about retreats, people can often go, I can't go on retreat, I don't have a big question, or I don't have a big need. But I think there's something very soft to say, what do you need to remember? What space have you given your truer self? And that kind of, and I love that Parker Palmer, our souls are like wild animals and they need that quiet to emerge. And just that sense that retreat can offer that to people, and solitude.
It is the come away with me for a while.
Yeah.
And gently a sort of thirst builds up somewhere in our being. We realize we need something, and when we did a bit of research around the crossroads work, one of the questions on that retreat is, what do you want? So it was question Christ asked the disciples, and the answer we got back was, it's just so simple. It was peace. The one thing you want in life is just peace. And even if you just touch in to that desire within you for peace, then you begin to realize, oh, okay, actually, I really need a bit of that now, or that word space that we often use, don't we, and try and define it in terms of time. But so that gentle sensitivity to that need for a shift in being, really, and we can really help each other with that. I think just holding up the mirror and help each other notice, what do you really want?
You saying that just reminded me what we've spoken about before, that it's very hard to put this into words, but sometimes in the very desire for something is the thing itself calling out to us. So the peace calling out, saying, hey, you haven't been here for a while. So, yeah.
And so in that kind of returning to work and returning to normality, I guess I think you said it a little bit, but what would you say would help people remember to return to themselves? That was a rubbish question. That was all over the place.
It's probably the question that we all need to ask ourselves and each other. So quite often, I remember learning this on Encounter as well in the one-to-one work. Particularly if there's been particular movement in a session, that lovely question of what's your sense of what's going to help you remember that place you found? It's rather than us imposing it on somebody, just asking that question. In practical terms, people take feathers home from Bardsey, or there might be something physical, a stone to hold that helps them remember. Sometimes there's something about physiological or somatic remembering that I personally feel is hugely powerful. So sometimes we'll be asking questions that we don't really need the answer to. We're just asking so they can remember. What does it feel like? What colour is it? What texture? What temperature? It's not because we need to. So what is it, so that we can recall this?
Yeah, we do. That's we have to be careful. This word remembering, that it's not like memorizing, which becomes just a 2D storage. It is, in the Hebrew, remember has no past tense. So in 42, Psalm 42, therefore I will remember you. The psalmist then, the deep calls to deep. So it's that simply breathing back into your normal state of being. Normal in the divine normal rather than the socially patterned normal. But to me, at the end of the day, it is just the crazy simplicity of it. Actually, it is ridiculously simple once we stop trying just to let go and breathe. But the only thing, the trying simply needs to be to honour ourselves enough to say, hang on a minute, I need to breathe, I need to ground, I need to express some love, receive some love, and that's what the retreat process provides. It's just that pause to come into being. But it is so ridiculously simple, as long as we trust who we are and the one who is always with us. I think that's really the essence of so much of the work is accessing the when Christ talks about follow me, we tend to think about this figure that we follow, but of course it is the Christ within us saying, take this step and I've got your back. The sense of direction is in us all the time, and it is so often just trusting that. Something about doing that together, being in that journey together, that helps us trust. Crudely, is to trust.
The thing about as you talk about the kind of somatic aspect of just how important as directors that we kind of savor. We help our directees savor those experiences so that they can hold on to them more deeply and kind of really experience that. And we touched on it earlier, kind of some people can't access retreats kind of physically or into spaces, but almost that idea of having a feather or a stone, something that can ground you to a place that you could maybe take to a corner of a house or of your flat and create a thin space. I know you mentioned kind of in lockdown, what was that like? And I just wondered if you could speak to, how would someone create thin space at home? What could that look like?
It'll be different for every person, but I speaking for myself, in lockdown, I was living pretty much most of my day in the lounge come kitchen, gym space come prayer sofa come workspace of my little flat in Greenwich at the time. And there was a corner in that room where I had a very cheap corner unit that had some icons and some shells and just things that spoke to me. And it's not like I had to be in that corner, but it was there. People often just light a candle, lighting a candle. There might be a particular space of the home where you generally feel at peace, or where the cat comes and sits on your lap, or it will be different for other people. I guess we would encourage, wouldn't we, if it's online retreat, for people to find a space that, as far as possible, can feel undisturbed by things that want to impose themselves.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we just gave ideas for how that could look for those who might be able to travel. And as you say, Chris, so much of it is still the experience within. Like, we hold that experience within our beings that we can still access as well, wherever we are.
You remind me of a story. I was very fortunate to be in Egypt on an Enneagram, spirituality of the Enneagram retreat. I remember we were standing in one of these, I suppose it was a platform, a viewing platform in one of the sites. And it had been completely quiet when our little group went in, and our teacher was saying to us, "Now I want you to just practice now holding the silence, holding your inner silence, and see what speaks to you." And literally within a few seconds, there was a whole coach party. And people said, "Oh, this is difficult. And he said, "That's not the point. Still find your inner silence." And that was an incredible experience. Just, there can be noise all around us. Just finding that stillness within. It's a practice.
Simply for me is, if anywhere where prayer happens, the space gets changed. So if you have a place in your house that just regularly you sit and pray, it'd just be a chair, and that in the Benedictine tradition is that whole thing about rhythm. And so any little rhythm, even if you lose it, but come back a year later, it's, it all builds this kind of. I suppose Christ would talk about it as the kingdom. This slightly other. Rumi, in his poem, The Great Wagon, talks about the field beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. I'll meet you there when the soul lies down in that green grass. Here and there does not matter, and the door is open between the worlds, and people are crossing between the threshold. And that sense always that the divine reality is just a breath away. Really, it's impregnating everything. So anything we do in prayer is the Christ talks about the watchman opening the gate. Prayer, this particularly the contemplative, the stillness prayer, opens the gate. And so if you're doing that regularly, the place, that's why these thin places are what they are. And through the grace of God, there are parts of the planet which seem to, in the geology and in that seem to offer that as well. That just makes it easier. So have a place where you play and pray in regularly, whatever prayer may mean for you. Yeah, it is ridiculously simple. If we just trust again.
It's all about, those who might hear that and go, "Oh, that doesn't feel very simple." Or in terms of, as you listen and they're hearing you talk about retreats, and part of them goes, "Oh yeah, that's a bit of ooh," feeling drawn to that, but feel like it doesn't feel very simple. I guess, how would they start to move forward if they're feeling an invitation or a nudge or a curiosity?
Yeah, it's all about invitation, isn't it? Just come. So listen. Whatever you just begin by trusting your curiosity, trusting that impulse that has you say, "Oh, I want a bit of space, a bit of time out with others, go to a wild place." Or actually, I want to pray in a way that actually simply opens me, that prayer of stillness, and trust it and have a go. And keep going, and don't have any sense of success or failure. Just keep going. Sorry.
No, I don't apologise. I'd have the same response, I think, to anyone if you were talking about somebody thinking, "Oh, I'm starting to sense an invitation to want to guide a retreat," or create a retreat. Oh, but it doesn't sound simple. It's always the difficulty when we talk from our. Actually, we just both, I think, feel it's such a privilege and a blessing to have had this experience and still be in it. And so I'm afraid we'll be a bit, because we love it. And that can sometimes sound like, oh my goodness, we could never do it. Well, gosh, if I can, anyone can. And my advice, I think, would be if you're feeling an invitation, to just start with that invitation. So what's the invitation sensing? What do I want? Might I like to just gather 3 or 4 people around me next Saturday? And we'll go for a walk, or we'll come into my lounge and we'll light a candle. And I'll speak about what's on my heart, and others can do the same. So that's me just making something up. But it's almost a start with the invitation, with the wish, with the desire, because that's where God will be. And it's also where he'll know I'm not sure I can do this as well. And see where it flows.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, the first thing we do within 5 minutes on a retreat is have a minute of silence together. And just and simply say again, do that. Just sit down, have some people and sit quietly for a minute or so, and then talk a bit about the experience of just being in quiet and noticing what comes up, and that does it. As we even if the silence is uncomfortable, that's fine. Anything that just stops the busy mind. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I think there is such a desire for this to be collaborative as well as independent. I think people really want to experience these moments together as well as by themselves. And I think in my work, I've really noticed just how powerful shared silence is. Like, it can be totally transformational. But yeah, it's exciting to think, hopefully, that this might inspire some little outcrops of people gathering together in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I'd just give every encouragement to that. If you've got something you love, place you love being, and you're settled enough, bring a couple of other people along. And it's such a simple, beautiful way of being human, being in the human and the divine together. You don't have to drag people into a church. Just be in this loving space together.
And trust what comes. You say, I want to share this space with you, and I'm inviting you, and trust what comes. I mean, anyone who's practicing as a spiritual director, you're equipped with the skills you need to listen. That's all it takes, really.
It's always such an important encouragement, is that we have all that we need. Like, if there's an invitation there, there's probably enough in you and with God to begin something. I think we can get caught in, I'm not the expert, I've not got all the training, but just making room for God to move.
That's what I said to him when he first said, do you want to come and see if you want to guide on Crossroads Retreats? I went, I can't do that. You'll just come along and see.
Yeah.
That's scriptural too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was that lovely scripture. Christ, Lord, where are you staying? Come along and see.
Yeah.
Come along and see.
Yeah.
It feels, it feels like a really nice place to end, just on an open invitation to people.
Your word invitation, I think, is important. If there's any work, just sense into the quality of the invitation. If and then if there's an invitation there that has anything that has a spiritual, the resonance of Christ in it, then you're not doing the work. You're just facilitating the work that wants to happen through you, I think. And so I love the way you constantly framed your question around if you sense an invitation. You've done a little bit of work around that, and just please trust that wherever it takes you, because that's how the kingdom comes, really.
Mary, anything else you want to share just as we wrap up?
No, just a thank you to you, actually, for gathering us, the 3 of us. It's just been beautiful. As I've not been aware at all, actually, of all the people who may at some point when this goes out be listening to it.
Oh, no.
other than aware of that sense of community, this is for others. It's for us to share with others. And, as Chris says, we just need to show up and remember we're not doing anything.
Yeah, I remember on our first chat, you said, kind of get out the way and let kind of the space and the place do the work. In that kind of the breakthrough that will happen of just not of transformation, but of just presence, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for just your wisdom and your generosity and your time. It's been a lovely chat, and
Really enjoyed it.
I've had some nice moments of just resonance. So that's been a gift to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roanna.
Thanks, Rana.